Hey everybody, Tim Anderson here, aka Renfield, the Angry Bearded White Dude, and I'm back for another rant. And today's rant is all about the stupidity of every single frackin' show that comes out, either trying to call itself or other people calling it the next Game of Thrones. It's trying to beat Game of Thrones. Is this the next Game of Thrones? Ah! We're going to talk about that today. If this is your first time here, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so you get all the other videos that I do here on YouTube, including the other Angry Bearded White Dude Rants video series and beyond. Join the Discord and our gaming community. Links are down below. Also, check out the Patreon, which we'll talk about at the end of the video. But yeah, I digress. Let's dive into this. So, right off the bat, this is something that has been driving me nuts for months, and I've been wanting to make a video about it for quite some time, and I'm finally decided to take the plunge. If you do a quick Google search on the next Game of Thrones, you're going to get a whole bunch of stuff here. And I've got one article open from New York Post, but look at this. Could the Wheel of Time be the next Game of Thrones? 12 shows that could be the next Game of Thrones. Wheel of Time and the risky quest finding the new Game of Thrones. Then we have what happened to shows that were supposed to be the next Game of Thrones. Hang on, I didn't mean to open that there. Let's open that in a new tab. Then we actually have the next show in the Game of Thrones series, The House of Dragon. But it's just a very quick thing. What show will be the next Game of Thrones? That's from that actual thing. Let's dive into this. So we've got a post over here from TheRinger.com. What happened to the shows that were supposed to become the next Game of Thrones? Um, his Dark Materials, Lord of the Rings, Westworld, Witcher, Stranger Things, The Expanse, Event Horizon, The Mandalorian, Game of Thrones, spinoffs. And over here we've got this article from the New York Post, which talks about, there's a few of those which I already mentioned, but like Wheel of Time, His Dark Materials, The Witcher, Shadow and Bone, Carnival Row. Okay, which by the way, Carnival Row is a phenomenal show if you haven't watched this before. I really enjoy it. All these other ones are good too, but I really like Carnival Row. The Nevers, the MCU. It's very frustrating to me. Here's what I think it boils down to. It's kind of like when Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings films came out in the early 2000s. No one had seen an epic fantasy series before done in a film format in the way that those films were done, which is why they took the world by storm, um, won a boatload of Oscars, and established Wingnut Films and Weta Digital as like premier filmmaking institutions on a global scale. They pushed CGI forward, they pushed everything forward because no one had done it before at that scale. And for a very long time, everyone was comparing all of the upcoming fantasy movies, I should say, to the Lord of the Rings films. And everybody was trying to capture that magic. It was like, oh my God, fantasy is cool again. We need to make fantasy films as quickly as possible to take advantage of that interest from the public and make billions and billions and billions of dollars for everyone involved in the movie production industry. And eventually we got to the point where we were just seeing so many fantasy films coming out, not all of them good, that eventually it just kind of petered out. We definitely are not in a fantasy, being the most popular thing in the film industry right now. We had the Peter Jackson films. We had 10 years or so of fantasy films, and then we got to the MCU, and it was Marvel films and superhero films. And now we're kind of coming to the end of that, and we're heading into now streaming is sort of becoming the big thing. And I think that's what we come to with Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones did something that had never been done before in terms of capturing a global audience on a scale of which had never been seen. Now, that's not to say we hadn't had global shows before. The X-Files was a great example of that going into syndication. Lost was the first show that I can think of. Lost and like the reimagined Battlestar Galactica being two shows that had water cooler conversations and were this sort of global phenomenon. But even they were of the generation before the internet became this global thing where everyone had access to high-speed internet and social media was prevalent in every single nook and cranny of the world, and every country from first world all the way down to developing nations and even third world cities, everybody's got internet connections and everyone's got these devices which have internet capabilities. So the ability for a show to go global suddenly became uh, possible. And that's where Game of Thrones came in. It was the right time, the right place, but also a very good show, at least for the first few seasons. I don't want to get into a debate about the last season, but I definitely saw a fall off, after the first few seasons. And there's great discussions in the internet space about that in terms of how during the first few seasons they didn't have a huge budget, and so they were very focused on writing tight scripts and focused on character development. And then when it got really big, they started using that budget to create these special effects laden fight scenes. I remember for a long time, as an example, the Helm's Deep battle from Two Towers held the record of being like the biggest, most epic, longest fight scene ever portrayed in a film or television show format ever until Game of Thrones came along, and I forget what battle it was, but they did their big battle, and it dethroned the Two Towers for the first time. But anyway, right place, right time. Game of Thrones being there created this sort of watershed moment, and everybody sort of looking at the top of that mountain and seeing the beacon that is or was Game of Thrones sort of sitting there flashing brightly saying this is what you could achieve if you can hit these numbers. And so everyone is trying to recapture that magic in the same way that they tried to recapture the magic of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings films in the early 2000s, in the early aughts. I don't think it's possible. It is very frustrating to me, although I do understand why it's being done. It's very frustrating to me when it doesn't matter what show we're talking about. Every single time we see a new fantasy show that's in development or close to coming out, we start seeing these discussions about, you know, what shows. Like here's TV Guide has an article. This is from 2019. This one's from the New York Times one is from 2020. But here we have a 2 year gap. 2019. Here's TVGuide.com writing an article about what are going to be the next TV shows: The Chronicles of Narnia, Cursed, Dark Tower, Game of Thrones, Dark Materials, King Killer Chronicle, Lazarus, Lord of the Rings, which ended up being Wings of Power, Watchmen, Wild Cards. None of these came close to matching Game of Thrones in terms of audience and numbers. They have all done very well. The ones that have come out, like some of these, well, not all of these, I should say. Chronicles of Narnia, we still haven't seen it. Cursed got canceled. Dark Tower never got its show. The spin-offs, most of them have been canceled. We still have one coming in. His Dark Materials has come out. It's good, but not the numbers of Game of Thrones. King Killer Chronicles still hasn't come to the light of day. Lazarus still hasn't come to the light of day, I believe. The Rings of Power show hasn't seen the light of day. Watchmen, very, very, very good, but we only got a single run. It was a limited miniseries event. They're not going to do a second season. By the way, if you haven't watched that, it was really, really, really good. Wild Cards, which was another George R. R. Martin show. I don't think that's hit the airwaves yet. Wheel of Time, which came out, did not get Wheel of Time numbers. The Witcher did not get Wheel of Time numbers. Although The Witcher, I like The Witcher. I think it's very good. Wheel of Time sucks. Hate it. Not a good show. His Dark Materials, we already talked about. The Witcher, we already talked about. Shadow and Bone, very good. Got a second season renewal. I would highly recommend watching it, but again, not Game of Thrones numbers, nowhere close. Carnival Row, really good show, not Game of Thrones numbers. Nevers is the one I haven't watched yet. Whedon started it and then bailed on it or got fired from it. Who knows? He's had a fall from grace. The MCU, most of those have not been very good, to be honest with you. Loki was all right. I watched them all. Anyway, we also have The Mandalorian. The Star Wars shows are the closest thing I would think that are having good numbers, but even those, none of these are competing with Game of Thrones. So at the end of the day, it's a natural evolution of every industry that you're going to have something that comes out that captures the world's attention, and for a 5-10 year period of time everyone's going to compare it to that. But I will say that I'm really tired of everything being compared to Game of Thrones. These are all amazing intellectual properties and literary works for the most part. These are all adaptations. Let these stand alone. Let these be their own thing. Let's talk about them and the amazingness of those intellectual properties on their own 2 feet. Let's stop comparing them to Game of Thrones because we're always going to fall short. No show has yet to approach those numbers, and it's ridiculous to think that every show is the potential to be the next Game of Thrones. It's never gonna happen. I digress. If you like this video, hit the like button. Let me know your thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon if you want more content like this. We have a Discord. Links are down there. We have a gaming community that plays Thursday nights, Friday nights, Saturday mornings, and Sunday mornings Central Time. And I stream pretty much every single morning Central Time from around 6 to 7 a.m. for a few hours each morning. You can also support the channel with a membership here on YouTube, or you can go over to the Patreon page for the world map behind me. That's the Weave in the Void world. The project is called Weave in the Void. It's made by the Wandering Hermits, who are myself, my brother, and my wife, and we've got Nathan Napalm helping out. And it's a 5th edition tabletop setting with the books coming out in June. We also have a point-and-click adventure game that's being developed. You can download the free demo now. That's coming out later this year. And a series of books that are like Dragonlance with the chapters coming out twice per month, all done through Patreon. So check that out. Support the channel there as well. Hopefully we'll see you in the next episode. Stay safe, everybody. Have a good day. Have a good week. Until next time.